Hello and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining our session today as we talk about configuration, compliance, and audit at scale. My name is Archana Sridhar, and I'm a Senior Product Manager with AWS Config. I'm very excited to share this talk with Matt Gravlin, Principal Software Engineer at Intuit. Here's what we would like to cover today. We'll start off with some challenges around configuration, compliance, and audit at scale, and why that's important. I'll introduce you to some of the AWS services that help with these use cases. I'll hand it over to Matt to talk about the specific challenges Intuit faced and the deep dive on the approach that they took. I'll then come back to demo some capabilities for at-scale configuration, compliance, and auditing. Let's get started and talk about the challenges. We have builders, innovators, and doers in your team that need speed and agility in experimenting and delivering solutions. As you begin to or expand the usage of AWS for provisioning resources, building proof of concepts, and actual solutions, you need dependable tools that can help you manage cloud resources at scale. You need the ability to empower distributed teams so you're unclogging provisioning bottlenecks and promoting true agility. Then you also have the IT governance teams within your organizations that want to ensure that everything you are provisioning and building is in compliance. They want to mitigate the risks, protect your brand, and the solutions that you want to build, all from a compliance perspective. So the challenge you face here is striking a delicate but critical balance between agility and control. These challenges include addressing compliance, communicating with your leadership, and being audit ready every step of the way. To address these, most often the first place to look are the services in the AWS Management and Governance Suite, which provide you with a rich set of capabilities that can help with at-scale challenges beyond configuration, compliance, and auditing. There are many possibilities to provide agility and control while automating predictable tasks so you can focus on building your solutions. In addition to these, we have a growing partner ecosystem with over 140 management and governance software partners. Not all of them are listed on this slide, and most of them are in AWS Marketplace, so you can subscribe and provision to their offerings right into your account. Before we talk about the capabilities that help with the configuration, compliance, and auditing, let's unpack the fundamentals and see how they're connected. By configuration, we mean functional arrangement of resources, including their settings. Compliance refers to how resources conform to requirements of internal policies or external regulatory frameworks. Auditing is having visibility into resource changes across all of the AWS accounts in your organization, granting you the ability to perform some kind of a review. To achieve this, we need an inventory management system which maintains a real-time inventory of resources and their current as well as historical configuration. They should help answer questions such as what resources currently exist, their latest configurations, relationships with other resources, etc. Next, we need configuration compliance management, which verifies that your resource configuration complies with the baseline policies or best practices. This could be policies designed to conform to regulatory frameworks and standards such as NIST, PCI, or HIPAA, or these could be internal policies defined by your own InfoSec team. Together, the inventory management and the configuration compliance management functions support governance initiatives, simplify compliance by providing you accurate information to assist with decision-making, and to be audit-ready every step of the way. Now let's talk about AWS Config, a native tool within AWS integrated with other AWS services such as CloudFormation, CloudTrail, CloudWatch, and AWS organizations. It discovers resources automatically in real time without using an agent. It tracks configuration changes to those resources and maintains a configuration history for up to 7 years by default. It gives you the ability to define policies with config rules and evaluate resources against these policies either periodically or based on configuration change. It alerts you in real time about configuration and compliance changes and provides the ability to set up manual or automatic remediation actions of your choice. It is integrated with AWS organizations, so you can view resource inventory and compliance status of your resources across the entire organization, which is really the key to at-scale configuration and compliance management. And lastly, you can easily integrate config with your ITSM and CMDB tools, so you can continue to make use of your existing investments and enable incident and change management workflows as needed. So from an audit standpoint, config provides aggregation capability that can pull resource configuration and compliance data from selected or all of the accounts in your organization. So all these capabilities make config more like a continuous configuration auditor. We'll talk a bit more about these capabilities and see a demo. But first, I'll hand it over to Matt to hear from him on how Intuit handles configuration, compliance, and auditing at scale.
Thank you, Roshana. Hello, my name is Matt Gravlin. I'm a principal software engineer at Intuit. Intuit's mission is powering prosperity around the world. We are the makers of TurboTax, QuickBooks, ProConnect, and Mint, and we serve consumers, small businesses, and the self-employed. Intuit's transition to AWS changed how we look at compliance and audits. Intuit has been in AWS for over 7 years. While huge innovation was achieved migrating our applications to AWS, innovation in the compliance space was lagging and was increasingly becoming a pain point. In this presentation, I will talk about a project called the Automated Compliance Platform that started about 2 years ago, right about the time when we were nearly 100% migrated to AWS. Here's a brief summary doing compliance and audits from data centers to the cloud. First and foremost, probably the largest change was a dramatic increase in the number of resources, resource types, and dynamic nature of those resources. We needed to solve compliance at a much larger scale. The past methods of using ad hoc scripted checks were no longer going to work. We needed to move to continuous compliance. And infrastructure ownership was decentralized to the decentralized teams using their own infrastructure. So we also needed to solve for different processes as well. Here's our problem statement, which is primarily defined in the what. Intuit is constantly under audit. We need to adhere to over 10 regulatory frameworks, including PCI, NIST, ISO, and others, including variations of those frameworks across multiple applications. Intuit is a global company with over 2,000 AWS accounts operating in regions across the globe. This equates to millions of resources that fall in scope for compliance and audits. And the controls defined in regulatory frameworks and best practice frameworks always include a mix of AWS and non-AWS resources. For example, the laptop I'm on right now has controls defined in frameworks such as virus protection or encrypted hard drives. Another example is documentation. Moving to the how and normalized controls. When you read the various controls across the regulatory frameworks, and there is a lot of overlap. So to make management easier, we've normalized those controls into a single set of internal controls. Next, automation. Compliance and audits require a lot of different steps. This includes things like inventory management, rule evaluation, auto remediation, and others. AWS Config can help automate in all of these areas. Next, common format. What I really mean by this is a common outputs format that can be used to store evaluation results and evidence if applicable. For this, we chose to use the Amazon Security Findings format, also known as ASFF, used by AWS Security Hub. ASFF provides a flexible schema that can be used to store evaluation results and security-related events. Moving to process, it's important to have a culture of security awareness. By being transparent and providing compliance visibility to your end developers, it helps maintain good security posture. The next, team effort. A project like this requires a lot of teamwork. For example, compliance engineers, security engineers, cloud engineers, auditors. We have over a dozen teams creating custom checks, sending their evaluation results and evidence into the platform. And of course, the developers who own the applications and infrastructure. Finally, build trust. Trust is absolutely essential in a compliance system. It's important for your internal users, especially if you're asking them to take action, and your external auditors, so evidence can be used in an audit. There are three main business outcomes we wanted to achieve with this project. Number one, demonstrate continuous compliance and be audit ready at all times. Number two, effectively manage remediation. Auto remediation is ideal, but in cases where that's not possible, automatically create work tickets and provide very clear instructions to your end users how to remediate. A lot of your end users may not be aware of these compliance standards. And number three, auditors brought along the journey and implicitly trust the evidence. Compliance platforms such as this is a fairly new concept, and it's a new concept with the audit community as well. So it's really important to involve them and bring them along the journey with you. Here's a diagram of the internal system that we built to solve some of the challenges that I talked about earlier. It's called the Automated Compliance Platform, also known as ACP. There's 5 main areas. Let's start with content management in the upper left, where you see controls and PECs. Controls are those normalized controls that I talked about earlier that map across various compliance and best practice frameworks. PECs is a concept we came up with that stands for Programmatic Expression of Control. While controls define the what, the PECs define the how. You can basically think of these as configuration files that are consumed by the providers below. Let's move on to the providers. The providers are the source systems that send evaluation results and evidence into the platform. For AWS, our 2 primary providers are AWS Config and AWS Security Hub. Security Hub, in addition, has integrations with numerous AWS security services, such as GuardDuty, Macie, Inspector, and we can take advantage of receiving those events without any additional integration. Below are the internal providers. These are custom checks where using Config or Security Hub is not necessarily feasible. Examples of these are EC2 instance checks or the checks on my laptop that I talked about earlier. In fact, we even have providers that check for proper documentation. In addition to sending the evaluation results to the platform, they also send evidence to the S3 bucket to the right. This can be in multiple formats. It may be a configuration file on a EC2 instance or a PDF documentation file. Moving to integration and processing to the upper right. We use Amazon EventBridge and Amazon Kinesis data streams primarily as a way to consolidate the evaluation results across accounts and regions. And then we use Lambda as a way to enrich those evaluation results with additional metadata. For example, attribution metadata such as BU, application, owner, and contact information. And then finally, we write those results to Amazon DocumentDB for long-term storage. And the final portion is the Acp Portal. This reads the evaluation results from DocumentDB and the evidence from S3. And it provides additional functionality such as dashboarding capabilities and aggregations, such as what % compliance am I for a particular framework by BU. And another one is running ad hoc queries, such as by account, by region, by framework, or by compliance status. And then another function would be reporting, where you can run long or large reports and output them into multiple formats, such as CSV, JSON, and Excel. ACP's use of config. Just over half of our checks are from AWS Config rules. We are heavy users of AWS Security Hub and AWS Config. AWS Security Hub actually uses AWS Config rules under the hood for a lot of its controls. We try to take advantage of managed config rules whenever possible, but we'll create custom config rules to fill in those gaps. To send those results to ACP, I developed a custom integration that takes the rule evaluation results using config APIs and config aggregators, converts that into the ASF format, and then ultimately send to the platform. And to maintain state, we use AWS config change events in CloudTrail to ensure we don't have any false positives for resources that no longer exist. Here's a summary of our results. And today we're running hundreds of checks, sending over 20 million results per day. In closing for my last slide, a mixture of lessons learned and call to action. I'll start with our first lesson learned. Audit fatigue has more to do with audit preparation than evidence collection. It really pays to be prepared. If you know the resources that are in scope for compliance, you have an inventory of those resources, and especially if you know those resources are passing compliance, then you're in pretty good shape. Collecting evidence we find is a little bit less difficult than being prepared for those other steps I mentioned. And next lesson learned is there's no universal definition of acceptable evidence. Evidence is subjective, that we learned, and it's difficult to automate a system if it is subjective. For example, one auditor may say we need screenshots, and another one may want to look over your shoulder and view you running commands. This is outdated, and we can do better. For call to action, the first one, traditional interview-based random sample audits need to be modernized. If evidence is subjective, it's very difficult to automate. Hopefully, with the help of AWS and other businesses facing the same challenges, we can influence the industry to create better audit standards. And finally, to scale audits in the cloud, standards. What I mean by that are the three standards: the normalized controls that I talked about earlier, the evaluation result standards, such as ASFF, and evidence standards, which hopefully we can have a better standard in the industry. Those three, along with automation, is the key. Thank you for watching, and I'll hand this back to Arshana.
Thank you, Matt, for walking us through Intuit's journey. With the management and governance suite of products, as well as the partner ecosystem we discussed earlier, different implementations with varying levels of complexity are possible. As is evident with Intuit's example, customers use them to meet the different nuances and use cases, and we continue to build solutions based on customer feedback. So let's look at some of the additional capabilities with AWS Config before we get into the demo. When you need to monitor the inventory and configuration compliance across multiple accounts in multiple regions, you need the ability to create views that can give you a specific perspective of the infrastructure for the use case that you are looking for. Here's where the multi-account, multi-region data aggregation capability comes in handy. The Aggregated View provides resource inventory and compliance data, making it simpler for you to visualize and monitor the overall state of your organization. You can run advanced queries on top of these aggregators, so you have a single endpoint to query exactly what you need without having to perform multiple API calls or needing to go to each linked accounts and pulling the data from there. Conformance packs are another powerful mechanism for at-scale deployment and central management of config rules and associated remediations. You know what policies you want to enable for different parts of your organization or for different types of accounts. So you can deploy conformance packs from central management account or from a delegated admin account, creating immutable rules in linked accounts, helping you, the central admin, enforce the must-have policies in specific accounts based on whatever they are used for. You can selectively add remediation actions for these rules and policies, and you can choose from a set of managed rules AWS has to offer, or include your own custom rules with these conformance packs. We have over 50 sample templates for various service level best practices and compliance frameworks. You can use these as a starting point to deploy what you need at scale. Now let's go see these in action. All right, so we are looking at the config dashboard here with the resource inventory in this particular account and the rules or the compliance status of the rules on the other side. We can jump into specific resource type and then look at all the resource identifiers with that particular resource type and then filter by compliant and non-compliant resources. That's again for just one single account. And then we can go into the rules area and take a look at what rules are present in this particular account. You can add managed rules, custom rules for this particular account from here. I'm going to focus more on the at-scale use cases as part of this demo today. So we talked about conformance packs as mechanisms to deploy at scale, deploy config rules and remediations at scale. Now here we have a few conformance packs in this particular account, and we are going to see how we can deploy a new one. As I mentioned before, it's very powerful because you can deploy immutable rules and even set exclusions for certain accounts if you don't want them to have conformance packs. So here we have offered 50 plus sample templates that encompass a wide variety of compliance frameworks as well as service level best practices, and then it even has well-architected level best practices. You can pick one and deploy the sample template as is, or we recommend that you take a look at it, add remediation actions that are necessary for your accounts, and then either upload a template from an S3 bucket or do a YAML upload directly. So in this case, I'm going to just quickly do a template update from here. I'm going to deploy it into my account. But let's go ahead and see the rules in one of these already deployed CPACs while that is completing. So as you can see, each of these templates come with a wide variety of rules, and you can see the compliance of each one of these rules, and you would see the remediation action as well if it was associated. Now, the organization conformance packs, as I mentioned, have additional benefit of deploying immutable rules. These cannot be modified or deleted, which means you as the delegated admin or the central management account have the ability to deploy them and enforce them into a specific linked account as necessary. And that's really powerful from a compliance management standpoint. And you can deploy multiple flavors of whatever conformance packs you need for these accounts. Let's now move on to another capability that gives more of the at-scale advantages, and that is aggregators. So we're going to go into aggregators here. So aggregators basically brings in the configuration and compliance data from multiple accounts and regions. So you can use this as from a management account or the admin standpoint, or you can also individually request for permission from individual accounts and create aggregators. And that, at a nutshell, shows resource inventory, non-compliant rules for the specific aggregator. So we're going to go ahead and see how to create one. So in this case, we're going to see, we're going to create aggregators for multiple regions. You can create it for all regions or for specific geos if you want to create multiple views that way. You're already pulling the configuration and compliance data, so you can create multiple views to meet your needs. In this case, I'm going to pick all of the EU regions just to kind of create a different flavor of an aggregator. If you selected all regions, you have the ability to say include future regions when those are supported. But by way of the organization aggregator, what you do get is you get the capability to add additional linked accounts when they become available in the future. All right, so I'm going to create this aggregator. And while that's pulling the data, let's use one of the existing aggregators to see all the different capabilities that it comes with. So as I mentioned before, you can see the resource inventory, but first we can see the accounts that it is aggregated from, and then the regions the data is coming from for each of these accounts. So that is shown here as well. And then on the dashboard, you can see the configuration and the compliance data. So basically, all of the resources that are coming from these different accounts and regions, as well as the non-compliant rules. And it shows like a generic compliance status across all of these accounts and regions. You can go into individual views as part of the aggregator and filter out by region or by compliance of the rule. So in this case, I'm going to look for a specific region and a specific non-compliance. Yeah, so that shows all of the different rules across the different accounts that you aggregated. Same thing with resources. You can see a combined state of resources and filter out them by resource type and such. So that's the aggregator capability. Now, over and above the aggregators, we have advanced queries. Config offers advanced queries, which is powerful for individual accounts and regions, as well as for using across the accounts and regions. There are some sample queries that are available out of the box, but you can alter these queries. You can create your own from the ones that are provided here. So for example, I want to see the EC2 instances that are running in my particular account. I can go ahead and run the query, or I can select an aggregator and run the query. So for all of the data in the current state, from the different accounts, you can see that information available. Next, if I want to add another layer of criteria here, let's say I want to look at this for specific availability zones, I can enter that here as well and run the query. So it shows for that particular availability zone. Okay. You can also pull in compliance information from other accounts and regions that you're aggregating as part of. And this is powerful when you need some data from an auditing standpoint. So let's look at it here. So if this particular query, when I'm running it for an aggregator, really gives me a glimpse at the number of resources that are non-compliant across the aggregator. So this means it's pulling it from all of the different accounts. I can export this either as a JSON or a CSV and use it in auditing as required. So that becomes a powerful data input into auditing as required. All right, so that was the demo. We looked at some of the powerful capabilities that AWS Config provides, including conformance packs, aggregators, and advanced queries, all of which help you with at-scale management of configuration, compliance, and auditing. That's the end of our session. Thank you so much for joining. We have additional resources on the AWS Config website where you have blog posts and how-to videos that you can use to assist with advanced use cases. We learned about Config, we learned about Intuit's journey and how they achieved configuration, compliance, and auditing. And we hope this was useful. Thank you so much for joining.